enhanced conditional access, simplified zero trust. Find out more about this Microsoft and Tanium partnership on today's episode of Go Tanium Tech Talks. Welcome back to Go Tanium Tech Talks. I'm your host, Ashley McGlone. Now, if you're like me in IT, you've heard your share of buzzwords. And before you roll your eyes, I know what you're thinking. Zero trust is just another one of those buzzwords that salespeople like to throw around. But hold on. Think about peanut butter and jelly, bacon and eggs. Well, Microsoft and Tanium go together really well when it comes to this. And we've got this new Azure AD integration with Tanium. You know, on a previous show, we talked about the Sentinel integration that's come out of our Microsoft partnership between Tanium. And so now today, we're going to talk about a new limited availability opportunity for you to participate in this. And why it matters to you is because at the end of the day, it's going to make your job easier. Okay. And we're going to get into what that's going to look like for Tanium administrators and IT pros all up. So joining me today on the show is Mike Fiorina, who is our SME lead here at Tanium for this integration. Mike, introduce yourself for us.
Sure. Thanks, Ashley. Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Fiorina. I'm a senior director in our technical account management organization here at Tanium. I've been with the company for a little over 2 years, and prior to that, spent 11 plus years at Microsoft, and then 7 more years as a Microsoft channel partner, helping customers adopt their cloud technologies, whether it be communication, security, productivity, and otherwise.
So, Mike, you've had the inside track, so to speak, on this integration between Tanium and Microsoft. Tell us what got us here. How did we end up at this place with? And we talked about Sentinel in the past. Where did Azure AD come in?
Well, I think we saw an opportunity in working with a lot of the Microsoft engineering and product teams, kind of leveraging Tanium's strengths. How can we contribute to the Microsoft ecosystem to make customers more secure? It was really the end goal. And Sentinel was step one in that journey. And then Azure AD was a logical next step for us based on what we can do with real-time device posture checks and real-time remediation. I think it really kind of made sense, kind of that peanut butter and jelly analogy used earlier.
Yeah, clearly Microsoft has some great strengths in this area, and they came to Tanium for some of the strengths that we offer, and together you've got strength and strength. That's a great combo. So what can administrators of Tanium expect from this? You know, maybe kind of cut to the chase real quick before we get to the demo, but you know, what's involved from a Tanium side?
This is technology that's going to be available for both of our on-premises and cloud-based customers, and it's going to be a shared service that is going to serve to hook into cloud-based identity providers. So the first step of this was Microsoft's Azure AD. The idea was we wanted to ensure that customers could take advantage of conditional access capabilities. I think historically it's been a little bit challenging for IT organizations to design and implement these things. They look great on paper, and every security organization really wants to actually leverage these in order to protect the corporate resources. But the reality is that there's a pretty fine line that everybody has to tread with respect to user productivity and risk. And so how aggressive can you really be when you're kind of implementing these particular policies, because you don't want to be preventing users from doing their jobs. And just based on the current technology available in a lot of cases, it really revolved around waiting and forcing users to wait when they're locked out of systems for reasons that are beyond their control is not a position anybody wants to be in.
Yeah, I think what I've heard from customers is traditionally network access control type solutions tend to struggle because of the manageability of how do I manage all the different things, the exceptions, and make sure that I'm allowing the right people in and keeping the wrong people out and all that. At scale, it becomes quite difficult. So how does Tanium make that easier?
I think one of the limitations behind enforcing all of these types of conditional access policies in the past was the inability for most customers to be able to use real-time data to make those enforcements. So the ability to say, I know exactly what the state of this particular endpoint is or this particular user account in order to make those decisions so that I know that the decision that I'm making automatically through the use of my conditional access technologies is going to be the right one. And so with Tanium, we're pretty confident based on what we do and what is really our bread and butter, that we can give customers that ability to have confidence in those decisions that they're making within their conditional access policies.
Well, I think that's a sufficient overview. And, for me, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Why don't we jump right into the demo? Because I'd like to see this. You talk about zero trust and cloud, and my head just kind of floats off my shoulders. Like, okay, we're talking kind of abstract, but let's actually see, what does this actually look like?
Sure. So you mentioned zero trust as being kind of a buzz phrase, and it absolutely is. If you talk to 10 different people in the industry, you're probably going to get 10 different definitions. Our perspective on it is that, it once upon a time that the security perimeter was the network, and that's no longer the case. Now it revolves around identity and device. And so within Tanium Zero Trust, the new shared service that we're introducing, we're providing you with the ability to assess the state of an endpoint and using that in order to make those conditional access decisions. So within Tanium, we have the ability to integrate with Microsoft's risky user capability. I'll pivot over that really quickly. So within Azure AD Identity Protection, they've got a particular feature set oriented around risky users, and they use a lot of their powerful telemetry that they're collecting and untold vast network signals that they receive over time. So it allows them to see exactly how credentials are being used, what services are being accessed, what devices are being leveraged, where the logins are coming from. And Microsoft can then attribute a user risk level based on what they're seeing. And so what we're doing is we're bringing to bear the capability to incorporate device posture information on top of that. So it's not just about the user identity credentials, it's about the real-time device posture. So say, for instance, you as an organization want to implement a particular conditional access policy that says, I want to block access to Office 365 for high-risk users. So it's very easy to implement this in Azure AD. You can say, all right, any high-risk user on any Windows, Mac, or Linux device, we're going to block access to Office 365. And this can be extended to any application, any cloud-based application that can use Azure AD as an identity provider, as well as on-premises applications that you can use through their application proxy. There's a lot of real-world utility oriented around this. And so if you do turn on this kind of policy, you want to be pretty sure that anybody you're blocking access to Office 365, which is something that everybody lives in every day, Outlook and Teams and otherwise, you want to make sure that the decision that is being made by the system on your behalf is the appropriate one. And so within Tanium,
I've got a question here. So I've heard you talk about user risk and device risk here. Can you kind of split the hairs on that, split the difference? How do we gauge each of those? So it sounds like the Azure AD is providing user risk and Tanium is providing device risk. Is that right?
Yeah, well, we're actually kind of seamlessly integrating those two things. So with Microsoft, they're doing all of the heavy lifting on the actual user risk and how the credentials are being used. And what we're doing within Tanium is we're taking real-time device posture and figuring out which user is assigned to a particular device, and then we're incrementing the user risk level based on what we see about the device that they're using. So what we're doing right here within the interface is we're actually synchronizing the Azure AD list of risky users. So we have the ability to manipulate that here. We can manually add a risky user if we chose to do so. But the most powerful element of this is the ability to establish rules that are performing those device posture checks. And this is oriented around Tanium's computer group model. So if you want to create a new group that has a particular rule that you find valuable for device posture checks in your organization, you can go ahead and create that. It's entirely extensible and customizable and flexible. We put a few rules in here by default, things like, all right, if we're checking to see if a machine has Defender for endpoint disabled, which would be pretty serious breach of security in most cases, then that's going to be a high risk user that we're going to assess based on that value. And we can do similar things with the compliance level, high severity vulnerabilities or outstanding patches or threat response alerts that, that really kind of your imagination could carry you pretty far in terms of how you could leverage this in order to assess risk.
So what you said right there just all of a sudden makes this very practical for me. So I've got a user trying to authenticate through Azure AD, and Windows Defender service is turned off on their box. Let's say we're a shop that uses Defender and Defender's turned off that service. Then that is somebody that I don't want to let on my network just yet. And then Tanium would respond to that. I guess we haven't talked about the remediation piece yet. Maybe I'm getting ahead of things, but so we're going to validate whether or not they are risky and should be let in. So where's that where the remediation comes in then?
Well, the remediation could be, there's a few different layers to that side of the conversation. I think with computer groups, and all our admins know that these can be based on saved questions. They're going to be asking dynamically on a recurring basis to see if any endpoints fall under these particular roles in these groupings. So it would be very easy for those administrators to simply say, hey, we have this computer group. Let's attribute a recurring action to this group and say anytime a machine falls into this computer group, we can run a Tanium action to say start the defender service. And if for whatever reason that we fail in that, then they're going to be a high risk user based on that outcome. So you could do a lot of the remediation almost ahead of time in most cases. And I mean, you think about the way Azure AD conditional access works. It's not blocking the user from network access per se. It's blocking them from maybe particular services or particular applications, or it could force them to do multi-factor authentications. There's a lot of things it could do to protect your resources. But with Tanium, we're going to continue to have access to these devices regardless of what risk level they have. So we can either do the remediation proactively, ideally, or the next phase of what we introduce as part of Tanium Zero Trust. We're currently limited availability, kind of phase one of what this product is going to be in the end. Phase two is going to be incorporate some automatic remediation on this side so that we have the ability to do this remediation anytime we see these things in conjunction with what we see in Azure Active Directory, and then also have the ability to reset user risk so that we can ensure those users are promptly given access to the resources that they deserve based on what we're able to accomplish.
So we've talked about both sides of this. I'm really curious to see where the connection is. So how do I configure this as an admin? Do I do something, or is that something's provisioned for me? And then they give me the thumbs up in an email and it says, now you're connected. How does that connection between Tanium and Microsoft actually happen?
So within the configuration settings of Tanium Zero Trust, I have the ability to input my Azure Active Directory tenant ID. And then there's this concept of Azure Active Directory and the ability to define application registrations. So it's very simple to go ahead up here and create an app registration that's going to be aligned to whatever I'm creating within Tanium. So if I create a new registration here, I'm just going to give it a quick name. I register that, and then I'm provided with my own unique application ID and directory ID. And then at that point, I'm going to be able to create a secret oriented around this as well.
Yeah, the goofy part here. Yeah, as I'm asking you to show me all the secrets that you're going to swap in the UI between the solutions, right? That's probably not the best thing to show everybody, but essentially there's a UI on the Azure AD side, there's a UI on the Tanium side, and like a lot of things, you find your secret numbers on one side, you paste them on the other side. Is that kind of the gist of it here?
That is the gist of it. Yeah, we provide basically we have to input some Graph API permissions on our new application that we're creating here. And then that in turn allows Tanium to read the right properties and write the right properties within Azure AD.
And is that something I would do entirely on my own, or do I need to enlist Microsoft or Tanium support to do part of that? Because I realize this is early days still and things could change, but what's involved there?
Yeah, on the Tanium side, there's going to be a new license required that's going to unlock the ability to import the Zero Trust solution. It's not a separate module, it's a shared service, so it's going to be more content oriented. On the Microsoft side, there's nothing special here. It's all, if you have an Azure AD administrator with the right credentials, they're going to have the ability to create this either in conjunction with you or based on directions you provide as a Tanium admin.
So we talked earlier about computer groups that would be checked out from the Azure side to understand from what's coming across the Tanium side. So if we can put it in a computer group, it can become a criteria. That's what I took away from that. As far as modules are concerned, I'm guessing the kinds of criteria I could use would depend on what Tanium modules I have. Are there requirements for certain modules in Tanium, or what would make a lot of sense there?
There's no formal requirements at this point in time. I think we'll kind of assess this as we get closer to general availability. But yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head, wherein you're going to have more options depending upon which modules you have available to you. So you can see in here, I took some options available through comply or patch or threat response. So those are the ones that I think are going to be most commonly used, but there will certainly be some custom stuff that customers will leverage. And there's other elements of Tanium that could be used in order to make some of these decisions and use some of the content those modules provide in order to assess risk.
Yeah, particularly, maybe you're looking for something as simple as, my company's AV agent of choice, whether that's Defender or something else. Maybe you've got some custom sensors with your own in-house apps or your security stack you want to validate is all present, installed, functioning on the endpoint. I can see lots of options there. So for our audience that's watching here today, this is very early days. We call it limited availability, and the way it goes. All right, I want to date myself just for a second. There was an ABC Schoolhouse Rock. I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill, right? How do I get through Congress, right? So how do things go in the Tanium publication process? It goes limited availability, early availability, general availability, right? So you get a chance on this show. We always talk about this is your chance to participate, have a voice if this technology is meaningful to you. So right now it's in limited availability, very early days. So, Mike, what have we heard so far from customers who are in this very early phase?
People are pretty excited about it. I think the challenges that we laid out in the beginning about why conditional access may not be as broadly used across the industry is kind of resonating with a lot of folks. They'd love to be able to use these kind of capabilities, but it's dangerous. If you do it improperly, you can end up with a real mess on your hands and a lot of angry users. And so the ability to use what we do with Tanium in conjunction with what Microsoft offers, I think is pretty compelling for a lot of organizations. And so there has been significant interest in what we're doing here, and people are kind of chomping at the bit to see us actually release this so they can start to take advantage of it.
And I know you're not a product manager, so I'm not going to ask you about any dates. I know we can just say it's coming soon, right? And the one way we can make that come sooner is if we have more people helping to evaluate and test this. How do people who would they've watched this and they say, oh wait, this is something, yeah, we need this right now. How can people get involved here and begin to test this in their own environment?
For any established Tanium customer, you're going to have your own account team of your director of strategic accounts or your technical account manager that you work with every day. Then reach out to those folks and kind of volunteer your interest. And if for some reason that isn't a good avenue for you, then you're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to steer you in the right direction.
And for those who've watched the show for a while, we've also got the address go@tanium.com. That makes it really easy. If you want to reach out to us, go@tanium.com and let us know if you'd like to participate in this limited availability trial as we're developing and honing this integration in between Microsoft and Tanium for Azure Active Directory. So, Mike, anything else as we wrap up here? What's coming next? We're talking about limited availability. It's early days yet. What are some of the things maybe we're forecasting to hopefully have implemented by the time this goes to general availability or production release?
Well, I think we'll just have to kind of wait and see on some of this stuff. I think we're hoping to have this limited availability period last a couple of months and then step into more of that EA, GA model early next year. So we hope to have this in customers' hands as soon as possible. So that's certainly the goal. I think it's probably important to mention to this audience that there is from the Tanium side, there's certainly, we called out the fact that certain modules are going to contribute to what you can do with this. On the Microsoft side, in order to take advantage of this, you do have to be either an Azure Active Directory Premium P2 customer or a Microsoft 365 E5 customer in order to take advantage of that risk user capability. That's one of the elements that's controlled through that licensing model within Microsoft.
Well, Mike, thanks for coming on the show today to let us know about this integration. And I know our viewers will be interested in the show notes below here on YouTube. There are some links for you, a 2-page document that's going to give you an overview, a solution overview of kind of what this is involved. It's got a little graph there that explains kind of the integration touch points and the workflow involved behind the scenes. So you want to check that out, and some blog posts, also another demo that Mike has given. So we've got some resources for you there in the description below. So be sure to check those out. And like Mike said, if you'd like to participate in this, reach out to your Tanium account team, Tanium support, go@tanium.com, or find Mike on LinkedIn and connect up with him there. And so we'd love to have you join this limited availability trial. We've talked about that with other product releases on this show before. So this is kind of a preview, a sneak peek about what's coming, but it's not like it's all future. You can actually get your hands on this today. So we'd encourage you to do that. Well, Mike, thanks for joining us on the show today. And for those of you who are watching, again, check out the resources below and let us know how we can help you with your journey to zero trust, wink, wink, buzzword, right? But we're going to make this easier. And with the power of Tanium, the power of Microsoft. So until next time, go Tanium.